Hello, it's Friday, February 3rd, and today we'll be talking about what else? The search for the Cardinals' new head coach. I've got a couple of good news Cardinals announcements, and I'm bringing in my returning guest, my coworker, member of the faithful, Dougie Fresh, kicking the bits on Twitter for a little talk therapy on the 49ers loss. Let's get into it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Kelly Singh.
Murray heaves it downfield. It is caught. It is caught. DeAndre Hopkins. Miraculous. It's Murray magic.
The sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast. I am Kelly Singh. If you're new to the show, we've been doing this all season long and into the off season, bringing in guests, being by myself, sharing some headlines, but a little bit about me. I'm a Phoenix native. I'm a content enthusiast, and I'm a general all-around fan. So if you disagree with the things I have to say, that's okay. I don't consider myself to be a head coach, a sideline coach, a player, anything. I am just a fan. What else do I want to tell you? Anything else exciting? I guess not. I stumbled across a couple of good news items. Actually, I may only have one good news item. There's a couple of good news items, but one of them in particular, Budda Baker. Everybody loves a good Budda Baker defensive Arizona Cardinals safety. Excuse me, I'm choking. Budda Baker has ranked second in the inaugural Players All-Pro team. Okay. So out of the top 5, Budda Baker ranked second behind Derwin James.
Nice.
But what I find interesting, Doug, is J.J. Watt. Where's J.J. Watt in this? Budda Baker is the only Cardinals player listed for this inaugural All-Pro team, and I find that to be a little odd. I mean, for offense, sure. Offense was dicey for the Cardinals, but defense, slight or no?
I mean, it's a slight, but as a 49er fan, Christian McCaffrey didn't even make the Pro Bowl. So yes, I really don't look into those types of accolades. I'm sure the players don't care. I mean, to make All-Pro, I'm sure it's an honor for a lot of these guys that get that acknowledgement and they accept it. But at the end of the day, you know, who's making these decisions?
That's true. That is very true. I mean, we could look at just even the Pro Bowl team where we saw Tyler Huntley make the list ahead of other players.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
Okay.
And some people say, like you mentioned, how do we know how these are chosen? For that particular part, it is that panel, which happened to have Ray Lewis on it. So there's a little home cook in there probably for that alternate spot.
I mean, is the Pro Bowl even decided the same way as the MLB All-Star Game? You know,
initially,
like the MLB
fans.
Well, yeah, but the MLB is like 100% fan vote. And then
it's not 100.
Well, I mean,
well, no, yes, go ahead with what you're saying.
Like MLB, it's like, you know, the starting lineup is 100% based on the fan vote. And then, you know, there's coaches' decisions and stuff like that. Christian McCaffrey was one of the most popular players in football, and he didn't make it, like, at all. So it was like, how much of it in football, right? How much is it fan vote versus? I
understand a lot of that weight is this panel of past players and such, but I'm not sure about this particular award, the All-Pro team. I actually don't know how that's chosen. I just thought it was super weird. And if we're talking offense, no DeAndre Hopkins, that feels a little weird, but not totally. I want to say, though, this is a piece of good news. I'm very happy for Budda. I'm very happy for Arizona. And that recognition was well-deserved.
Do they, with the All-Pro team, is there like someone from every team represented?
It feels like that. Now that you said that, if you guys know, tweet at me, because I literally just saw this really cool graphic, tweeted out, and I thought, you know what, let's share about Budda Baker. But it is also based off position. So these were safeties. But I'm wondering like who it was that they chose over like JJ Watt in his position, for instance. So I'll have to take a look into that.
Yeah.
You know, we're just going to go right into the elephant in the room, which is still the search for a head coach. I know you're not a Cardinals fan, but you love to talk football with me.
Yep.
My favorite candidate as we're going into this may be Lions defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. I think that might be my favorite. He's getting his second interview, or may have had his second interview already as I'm recording this week. I also really like Brian Flores. I think both offer an opportunity for diversity that is not here, and it's not forced diversity where they have that stupid rule where they have to interview people of color and they have to interview women. I really feel like these are earned positions that create diversity, but also bring up coordinators and past head coach in Flores's case that allow them to grow their careers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've never really been a big head coach, searching person. I don't dig right into it. I'm not familiar with every team's offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. Right. So I honestly,
I'm not either.
Yeah, I honestly can't, speak on, the coaching pool per se. I know that over the last 4 or 5 years, the 49ers have basically lost every coordinator that they've had.
And I really wanted D'Amico Ryans.
Yes, they've all gone on to head coaching, which is great for them. We'll see what happens and how that pans out for their individual careers. As far as the Cardinals go, I think, and we've talked about it, talk about a dumpster fire, right? Like something is going on in that office, and hopefully, the ownership and people that make those decisions can, get that organization turned around. And, they have a lot of talent. There's a lot of people there. So I don't want to say it's like rebuilding quite yet, but, if you get the right people in place in management and coaching positions, you guys could be right back in it in as little as next year or the year after.
Definitely the year after.
So Brian Flores, what are you looking for? Are you looking for experience? Brian Flores has that experience. Are you looking for someone with heart? I would imagine the way that Dan Campbell has ran that organization, any coach that comes from his branch or history,
that's my thought too,
is going to have that heart and that passion. And then who's available? I mean, I took a look at those names.
There's a lot.
I took a look at those names, but I couldn't.
Two from the Bengals, offensive and defensive coordinators.
And look at what the Bengals have accomplished over the last 2 years.
Exactly.
So, you can't go wrong with, as far as success goes, that offensive coordinator, that defensive coordinator, they've had this success. So, obviously when you're making those decisions and you're thinking about who do we want, you look at, past experience, you look at, who was their mentors, the tutelage, and and then you look at what they've accomplished in recent years. So
yeah, same. And that's kind of how I'm weighing it, because I'm not super familiar with everybody's offensive or defensive coordinator, but when you look at the teams and what those teams have accomplished, you can make some deductions. You mentioned rebuilding. Or maybe not quite rebuilding, but I'm going to go ahead and call it rebuilding for rebuilding's sake, because we've got a new GM. We've got an open head coaching position. We've got, endless, just back office new. And then we have Kyler Murray, who will likely be out. They're saying half the season or more, but I'm thinking, based on what we've heard, it takes a year to recover. That would put him out the whole season, wouldn't it? I would think.
Yeah, because the injury was so late in the season, right?
Yeah, December, and then the surgery wasn't until January 2nd.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be tough.
It would be very tough. So I'm assuming we're going to pick up a quarterback. I don't think that we will rely on backups for the whole season. I just can't imagine that happening. Then we have injuries to overcome. The Cardinals have a ton of injuries between Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. There's rumors of DeAndre Hopkins being traded in the offseason. And the defense lost J.J. Watt. There's a lot of rebuilding happening. So I don't think this will be our year for the Cardinals. But I will say we've held on to draft capital by not going the route of Sean Payton.
Yep.
Money-wise and trades.
And now that you put it in that perspective, I can see where, okay, yeah, this year will be a rebuilding year. I mean, Kyler Murray's not even going to be ready for the start of the season. He may not. You might just want to let him sit and get fully recovered, right? Don't go out and spend any big money on free agents just yet.
Right.
Trade DeAndre Hopkins to get more draft capital. Mm-hmm. Trade, some of your veterans that are still relevant and get that draft capital. And you know what? Get your head coach in and let him get into the position to establish a culture. Mm-hmm. And then from there,
I agree.
Build. There you go.
I agree with you. I think from what I'm seeing in the mock drafts, I know you don't pay attention to the Cardinals per se, but what I'm seeing, friends, in the mock draft is that we're going for defensive positions in the draft and potentially in our first free agency pick. And I think that's a good move. While the bench did a phenomenal job coming in throughout the season, there was one game where every single person on the roster hit the field at one point, and they won that game. I have to go back and see which one it was, but I remember I reported on it on the show where I was like, can you believe every single person on the roster hit the field?
Wow.
So there's a lot to be said for the team we do have, but there's a lot of missing pieces. And there are a lot of candidates. I want to give a shout out to friend of the pod, Danny Druin, at Danny Druin on Danny. Oh my gosh, Donnie Druin, fan of the pod, at Donnie Druin on Twitter. Donnie, don't hate me. I am caffeine deprived right now. Donnie has a fantastic article out on Sports Illustrated right now, and it talks about the remaining candidates for the position, kind of what their pedigree is, where they stand. And one thing I want to call out is it's only been reported that Sean Payton and what is his name? Dan Quinn from the Cowboys have been interviewed twice. Dan Quinn has stated he's going to stay in Dallas. Mm-hmm. Sean Payton has gone to Denver. Mm-hmm. And now we have the only other candidate who's been interviewed twice, and that is going to be Aaron Glenn from the Lions. Okay. So I think there's something to be said there. That's great. Vance Joseph, who would be promoted from within, the Cardinals' current defensive coordinator, is not a fan favorite, but I will say at least he does have franchise history. There's something to be said for that, but it would be nice to get some new blood, some more diverse blood. Arizona is not the most diverse of states. So I'm really excited to see what might come of that. Man, I feel like I have beat that into the ground. There's really not a whole lot more that can be said about the head coaching position. And normally I'd wrap up the show because it would just be me giving you the latest within 15, 20 minutes. But I want to talk to Dougie Fresh, at Kicking the Bits on Twitter, a bit about what are the faithful feeling? Because the Cardinals and the 49ers are longtime rivals. And I know that there were many Cardinals fans who jumped on to the 49ers train to just support the division, to support our region. So going in, watching the game, things unfold. How do you feel? Let's have a little talk therapy.
I mean, not to make excuses, but it is a tough one to swallow. It's a tough pill to swallow. The team,
They just battled from
they did
the ground up.
From week 2 as a battle. I mean, I have my opinions about Trey Lance starting and being a part of this organization with Jimmy still under contract. And I'm a big Jimmy fan. I know there's a lot of people that are fans of the Niners that didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo, and they wanted that trade for or that change with Trey Lance. And nothing against Trey Lance. I just thought that with Jimmy's history as a 49er, NFC Championship games twice, Super Bowl once, like Jimmy is a proven winner. And we had the team to take that into the season. And, I thought Jimmy gave us the best opportunity to win. So when Trey Lance went down in week 2 and Jimmy was in, that's kind of when I got really excited for the season. And, I think we had a 3-4 start, and that was really rough.
Mm-hmm.
But then, things got rolling and we started winning games. And then when Jimmy went down, it was like,
I know.
Here we go again. But, here's this kid, Brock, comes out and, what he was able to accomplish. I mean,
it's amazing.
Phenomenal kid. And I think anybody that did jump on that Niner train after the fact, did because of what he was able to accomplish. I mean, that
it's like America's quarterback.
It was. I mean,
if you weren't cheering for Purdy, who are you cheering for?
What a feel-good story, right? The last pick in the draft, and barely made the roster as the third-string quarterback, and then to go on and lead the team to 10 straight wins in an NFC Championship game, and then all of that just to get hurt on his first drop back, and so it. Devastating, but no excuses. Some people might say, well, it's hard to win, when you have so many injuries, and that's football, right?
Yeah.
The injuries are part of the game. You plan for that stuff. If you were, you go into a game with 2-3 quarterbacks, you have to have a contingency of what happens if you get down to your 4th quarterback or even your 5th quarterback. And it seems like the 49ers just didn't even tap into any of those options. I know Kyle Juszczyk is an emergency quarterback. He could have took the snaps. He could have made the throws. They could have game planned around it. But, I mean, it is what it is. It sucks. It hurts. I am better than I was yesterday. Not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. Life goes on. So just getting ready for Super Bowl.
Who do you want to win?
That one's a tough one. And it's not so much about how any of the teams are built. And as you may know, but your listeners probably don't know this, but I have a tradition. Every year for Super Bowl, I go to Vegas to a friend's house, and I will pick a team to root for, and I will buy a hat for that team. I have root for the Eagles in the past against the Patriots, and I have a hat from that Super Bowl. I have rooted for the Chiefs against the Patriots, the Buccaneers. And they lost that one. So for this year, I chose to buy a Philadelphia Eagles hat. And only reason is because I don't know if the high ankle sprain of Patrick Mahomes is going to I know the guy's incredible and he's played through injuries and he can do incredible things. I don't know that defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles is nasty.
Yeah.
And if Patrick Mahomes can't get outside the pocket, it's going to be a very long, difficult game for the Chiefs.
I agree. I feel like, yes, he played through it last weekend. It was miraculous.
He dislocated his ankle one time in
it was
a left-handed touchdown. I mean, the guy's incredible.
He's incredible. He's putting mind over matter and powering through and getting it done. And there's not many people who could do that, but that doesn't speak to his mobility. That speaks to his heart. That speaks to his pain tolerance, but you can't just.
And Hassan Reddick
move.
Is a
Reddick. Yes.
Hassan Reddick.
Yes.
I mean, he was second in the league in sacks, completely flew under the radar. I have heard of him before, but I didn't know who he was.
The Cardinals got rid of him.
And it wasn't until, I've heard of him before, didn't know who he was. And then I didn't want to say bad word. But we fucked around and found out. Like, 49ers found out about Hassan Reddick real quick. Brock Purdy will never forget that name, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hassan Reddick was on the Arizona Cardinals, drafted to the team, and it was apparently not a fit for us, but I know that everybody is crying now because he's just killing it in Philadelphia.
He's a linebacker that was second in sacks.
Wild. It's just wild. And I love Jalen Hurts. I have loved Jalen Hurts since the day he came into the league, and I've had him on my dynasty team.
Yep.
And it wasn't this season, but last season, people were like still not drafting him. And I'm like, why? Well, because the Eagles suck. It doesn't matter in fantasy football if the team is not succeeding when the player is the one scoring the points.
Well, those are the players that I like to play against.
Yeah. Because you get a good team. I mean, 30 plus fantasy points.
Average.
Even last season when the Eagles were a losing team.
Yeah.
So
a lot of talent there. Lots. A lot of talent. AJ Brown signing is huge, of course. And then Devonta Smith. Yeah. I mean, that's a great
They're like
team.
leading together. Yeah. So I love that. When you always hear like, oh, they play by committee, and that is typically a bad news when you're playing fantasy, at least. But in this case, they are just so badass together that it doesn't matter if you had AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, and then now that fantasy has come to a close and we're just watching football, it's just good football.
Oh yeah, it's fun to watch them. I didn't watch a lot of Eagles games this year, but we saw it on this past weekend. Mm-hmm. That's a nasty team. That's a good team, and they're built for longevity, so that they should be good for a handful of years.
Oh yeah,
so
many years to come.
The East have their hands full for those other teams that are looking to make the playoffs. Eagles are going to be a tough team.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I am so glad that I wore my favorite shirt for your podcast.
You don't have enough Doug in your life,
It's Friday, and I wanted to be rambunctious and spontaneous, and I had this in my car, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to wear this.
So did I. Animal print.
Yeah.
That's my expression today.
Well, we can call this animal print.
You're an animal. Great. Stay tuned. There's still plenty of sick podcasts every single week, once a week off season, twice a week in season. Going to be at the Super Bowl festivities next week, starting midweek for me. And upcoming already is the draft. Planning for that. Exciting. So lots of stuff to talk about. Stay with us. Follow me at Kelly and Phoenix on Twitter. Send me your comments. Send me your questions. Tell me if I messed something up. I want to hear. Before we go, I hope my production crew has this on cue. I forgot to mention, I found this tweet that I thought was so hilarious. It's only going to make sense to Phoenix locals probably, but Video Games and Chill on Twitter. This just in, the Arizona Cardinals have requested an interview with the manager of Shane Co. on Scottsdale Road in Tacoma, 1 mile south of Bell Road. So the reason this is so, I can't even read it without laughing because Shane Co. is a jewelry company in Phoenix, and that little bit, that last line of where they're located, it stands out, and it's on every radio commercial.
Okay.
It's on every television commercial. Like,
where's Bell Road?
It's north. Well, it's North Phoenix, but it runs east-west across the whole valley.
Okay.
And Tacoma and Scottsdale's in Scottsdale, so it's a fancy part of town is their main business. But it's just so funny because when you're listening to the radio, that commercial always breaks in and he's like 1 mile south of Bell Road on Tacoma. And so I thought that was hilarious. There are several tweets out there like that are more relatable to people across the country, but being this is a local homegrown pod, I wanted to bring that in. Thanks so much, Video Games and Chill, for the laugh. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Kelly Singh on YouTube. Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.